This is nerve-wracking. Well, you've done it. Somehow or another, you've signed on for another webinar. I don't know what in the heck anybody was thinking, but welcome to yet another Western Balkans Adventure Travel webinar. I am Alex Crevar, your moderator for this monthly series. Today, we're looking at the advantages and challenges of network membership. Network membership among industry tourism operators. When tourism operators join forces to create official networks, they inherently move past a certain petty competition and cutthroat tactics and put aside personal bottom lines, even for just a moment, to sacrifice time and resources to advance an entire region, which is to some degree what we're talking about here today. Perhaps it's just a sector of the industry, maybe to promote a certain idea like travel safety. However, regardless of the reason, the result represents a particularly nuanced and evolved philosophy and tactic, one that understands that a rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. And also, regardless of the reason, the ultimate winner, at least what I posit is the ultimate winner, is the traveler, because whether they know it or not, guests in places that have pooled their positive energy as a vehicle for showing pride in their industry or their region or their country become a more valuable product and a more interesting place for travelers to be. Networks serve to codify standards. They work to promote quality. And needless to say, the overall tally is a positive one. The advantages of such cooperatives are numerous. However, there are challenges as well, and those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today with two travel professional veterans, two of our regulars, two of my close friends, both of them Adventure Travel Trade Association members. We're talking about the positives and the pitfalls of these tourism collaborations. If we can go to slide number 2, and we'll start this process. This is, I'll say, as I do each time, that this is a monthly series that's brought to you by Western Balkans Geotourism Network and the Via Dinarica Alliance. These are both cross-border cooperatives that are committed to strengthening the region's sustainability through responsible tourism. This series is hosted by Balkan Vibe. And it's the premier travel platform for the Western Balkans, offering the widest range of tours for the region, as well as a seamless booking and credit card payment system. The webinar series as a whole airs typically on the last Thursday of the month because of a handful of obligations that all of us have because we're in the middle of the tourism season. This one came today on a Monday, but each one of them is monthly and tackles a different issue regarding tourism, and specifically tourism as it pertains to the Western Balkans. Manning the controls today is the ever responsible, ever good Nermin Smajic, and thank you very much for making this possible. For listeners, the last bit of protocol here is that these are obviously free of charge, and they will be archived. Feel free to use this as reference material. Anytime you become particularly bored with your life, you're welcome to come here and check out the last one. We ask you to join the discussion, ask questions as you see fit. We will try to get to all of them. You can do so by entering your question into the join the discussion box about halfway down the Balkan Vibe page, or you can do it on the YouTube page. In the chat section. We'll get to as many as we can. The ones that we don't get to, we will respond to personally in an email. So leave your name and your email. We won't make those public, at least if you put them on the Balkan Vibe spot. To the next slide, please. We're at want to introduce our two guests. One is Jack Delf. He is here with us, and as he was last time. Thank you for being back, Jack. This is he's the owner and founder of Black Mountain, an adventure tourism operator, travel operator in Montenegro, specializing in genuine travel experiences across the Balkans. He's also the chair of the Western Balkans Geotourism Network, which makes him a particularly qualified person to speak on the issue we have today. Maybe go to the next slide, and I'll come back and let Jack, if you would, maybe explain, and we can come back to this slide because this is kind of an overview of a very brief overview of what it is that the Western Balkans Network does, and it'd be nice to hear your voice and maybe get a little bit of a lowdown before I go to introducing Chitti.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me back. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you know, it's a subject that's dear to both mine and Thierry's heart. I just wanted to mention something about the previous slide, and it was just the first line that, you know, I live here in Montenegro and I have an adventure travel business. And that just, I think that bit of background will help you understand why I believe our Western Balkans network is so important. Just briefly, 12 years ago when I arrived here, you know, Montenegro was forecast to be the fastest growing tourism economy in the world. And we already know in the next 10 years, there's going to be an extra 800 million tourists traveling around the world. And back then, the country was being sold as an upmarket Malta. They were selling Montenegro as a beach destination. And for those of you who know the Balkans, not just Montenegro, but the whole Balkans is incredibly rich in culture and nature, unspoiled, undamaged by mass tourism. So I just tell you that because back in the day, you know, and even still today, we find there's a bit of a disconnect between what some of the businesses want to achieve here, which is a very sustainable tourism model, and between the government, who are, you know, for various reasons, they're pushed to get foreign investment, and they are still thinking in terms of how many more visitors can we get to the region. So I just tell you that because I think we're living here in the Western Balkans in one of the last unspoiled destinations in Europe, certainly. And what's interesting is the private sector, the businesses like ourselves, we want to protect the incredible assets that we have. We want to protect the nature and the culture, and we want the local communities involved in tourism. So that's the background. And if you roll on to that slide that we had up originally, the Western Balkans slide, you'll see that what our network does is essentially we're a voluntary organization. We're all private businesses, although we now have some national parks involved. And what we're trying to do collectively is protect and conserve the nature and culture of this region, benefit local communities. And the way we're doing that is by addressing product gaps. So we need to find ways, as I talked about in last session, for guests to really come and experience this amazing nature and culture in a way that's sustainable. And so we're helping each other through sharing information, through sharing some of our customers as well, working together on joint packages and also shared marketing. So I think that's enough for my introduction. I'll pass on to Thierry, but we'll come back to some of those points in a bit later.
Well, that's great, Jack, and thank you for that, because it also helps to introduce the subject generally. And I just want to, you know, largely my role here is to just act as kind of snaps between you and Chitti. Both of you guys know each other very well, so that's also nice. But it's an important thing to remember that not only are these companies working together, but they're sharing customers, and that's a really evolved concept for folks who, you know, potentially think that they have to hold on to a customer with dear life for this one interaction, as opposed to building a relationship that may last for years. With that, I'll move to our next guest, who's also a good friend of ours and a regular here, is Thierry Joubert. Lives in Sarajevo, is a managing partner at Green Visions, eco-adventure travel operator based in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's the coordinator of the Via Dinarica Alliance, which also works with the Western Balkans Geotourism Network. They do a lot of similar things and have a lot of similar, they share members. So if we go to the next slide and give a sense of what the Via Dinarica Alliance does, and could you give us a kind of a rundown of the beginning of this for you, and how you got involved in this and what the Alliance is trying to do?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to a great webinar. Thank you, everyone, for making this happen. So we're Via Dinarica Alliance started off as a group of outdoor adventure agencies that were organizing trips along the Via Dinarica, the long distance trail. And as you can see, on the slide, we're basically a group of businesses where we have very similar values, from protecting the environment to high customer care, focused on quality. And one of the things that we had before we created the network was we had joint products. We were working together, and it was really both a marketing strategy as a vision or a strategy to start working together and promoting the destination as a network. So today, I hope we'll be answering some of your questions, but also talking a little bit about why networks are so valuable here for us small businesses and the region. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thanks a lot, and that's a great segue to where we're going. And I'll just, as a kind of brief rundown before we start. The idea here is that I have a few questions that we've all talked about, prior to this, about what the advantages are here and what a challenge or two to look out means. And if we go to the next slide, we'll just start this with questions. And anytime we need to come back to these two slides to maybe make a point, that's fine. Please request to do so. My first question has to do with why an organization would join a network at all. I mean, we typically think of, and I'll just use me as an example, because clearly I'm not an operator. We tend to think of operators, or maybe any business, frankly, working in a vacuum and creating something and then delivering it to the public, and the public pays for that product, and seemingly the company in question who is delivering that product or that service has figured out all the things that need to happen to make that happen, and they're doing it. This is the way myself as a consumer would think. So I'll start this with Jack, but I'll let this be a little bit open-ended. The two of you have talked shop on many occasions, so you feel free to talk shop again now. Why would I, as XYZ business here in the Balkans, even want to join an organization? Why wouldn't I just, or excuse me, a network? Why wouldn't I just want to do it alone?
The problem is, that most of the businesses, certainly in adventure travel, they're categorized, they're very small enterprises. They're probably 2 or 3 people, 4 or 5 people maximum. And, they are providing the experiences. So they're out there delivering the tours and delivering the program. So they're not resourced in terms of things like marketing. Also in new adventure travel, there's a lot to learn. This is a new industry pretty much. This has been growing very quickly. Tourism's going through this revolution right now in terms of what customers want. And it's very hard for some of these small businesses in these amazing rural locations to actually understand what's happening out there in the wider market, to reach the wider market. And so there's all these economies of scale that you can get by actually partnering with other people. The quote that I put this slide up because I found this quote back in '98 when I was setting up my business. Actually a few years after that, but when I was setting up my business, I said I imagined Montenegro as Europe's New Zealand in terms of adventure travel. And the expert said to me, who was visiting, said, you can't do that. You don't have a grassroots network of small businesses, of outdoor activity providers who can come together and coalesce and create the destination brand, which is what they did in New Zealand. In New Zealand, and I've been doing some research on the New Zealand study, it wasn't the government that came up with the tagline, the venture capital of the world for Queenstown. It was the businesses. And they started really doing adventure travel when it was in its infancy in the 90s. So they had to school each other. They had to teach each other. So for me, the most important things are this sharing of information and also this joint marketing of a destination in a new way. I mean, as I say, Montenegro is already predicted to be the fastest growing tourism economy. But that wasn't enough. We wanted sustainable tourism. We just don't want mass tourism. So, I mean, that's my short answer to that, Thierry. Would you add something to that?
Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. And one of the things, I think one of the reasons why we have these networks is because they kind of already existed through our business relationships. We never really said, okay, this is a network, but it was there. And we saw from our, our working together that we were getting things done quicker. We were able to, to create really great products with local partners on the ground. So, like when we work with you guys obviously know everything about the little olive farms on, on the peninsula there, and then we can immediately plunk that into, great products. And what happens then is we as small companies are actually then competing with some of the larger companies in terms of, cutting edge products, new products, which others would have, difficulty in creating. At the same time, we're also working together, when two of us work together, it's obviously when we start referring clients to each other, it's so great to know that, that I can send my clients directly to you without having to think about, okay, are they going to have guides who speak English? Or are they, is there going to be a first aid kit on board or stuff like that? So we're talking about standards. And I think that's that's become a very important thing for us, where we can seamlessly just refer people to each other without having to think too much about it. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about that later, what we're doing in terms of training and education, etc., which is important for the network. And then, pulling our money together, going abroad. What happens is also, we might all go to the ITB and kind of cover costs and organize presentations and bring people in, and it looks really, really good when you have 8 or 16 companies from 8 countries on a stand, and whoever comes to the stand will be serviced by one of us, regardless of our companies. Maybe it's more like where we're based at. So, which makes it a real. I think this is really cool for businesses, international businesses who want to start doing business in the region. They will come to us and they'll see us working together. And they'll really go like, oh, look, these guys really, they know what they're doing. They're getting along. They refer each other, and that makes it for a really fun experience, but also professional. And so I think that's one thing. And then the third, the last thing is what we have there is the destination management. Yeah, there outdoor adventures in the Balkans is not really yet on the radar screen of the tourism boards and the tourism ministries. I mean, it might be a little bit there, but it's not, it's not their main cup of tea. And so for us, it's really become also, I think, almost a lobbying tool and also a marketing tool, just to make sure that outdoor adventure is being represented in, whether it's in the media or whether it is with the customers, the clients, the other businesses.
I like. You go first, Jack, and
I was just going to say, I went through that list in reverse order to the way it's written there, because you're absolutely right. I mean, what the businesses need is really this product design and delivery support, particularly, when you get the phone call and as a tour operator, and tour operators will know this, you're asked quite often to put together very detailed itineraries, and you're given 24 hours to come back with a priced program. And so you rely on a network of other suppliers here, because there's no way I can put together, an 8-day program in 24 hours unless I've got good support partners I can call on, which I do through Via Dinarica Alliance and through the Western Balkans Network. So you're absolutely right on that. That's what they need. In this region as well, we did need some work on raising standards. The general old school traditional tourism standards are pretty good in terms of service and things, but the new tourism demands new standards, particularly environmental protection and the way that the tours are put together. So we did a lot of help with that. The marketing and promotion, absolutely, they all need, because, we're being outspent by traditional tourism, what I call big tourism. But I started with destination management because, as you said there, Thierry, it's what actually the businesses want. They feel like they're working in isolation in a bubble here, many of them, throughout the region. They feel they're not fully understood by government. They feel they're the only new tourism companies here, or innovative adventure travel companies here. So once they start coming together and working together, and then of course they start to realize there's power in this, and that perhaps they do have some clout and they can affect change. So yes, they all want the destination management piece, and that's what we hear in our meetings. But what they need is, of course, is the product design, delivery, and raising standards and marketing promotion. But they're all absolutely key. They're all good reasons to join networks.
I really like the direction of that is going in too, because the way that I always think of it in my kind of simplistic way is thinking about it from the opposite direction of where you guys think of it, because the way you guys think of it is more realistic because you're actually involved in it. But I always think of it as people making this huge sacrifice to be a part of such a thing. But in reality, it's almost a necessity, isn't it? Because most companies aren't going to have their Balkan department. So a huge outfitter, or excuse me, a huge operator in the UK or the US, they're now interested in the Balkans because the Balkans are is a popular place to go. But they're not going to have a Balkans department. Suddenly, a group of companies works together through either the Western Balkans Network, through Via Dinarica Alliance, and they have a very powerful, almost multi-department company that they're working as a group of really smart people who have been doing this for a while, that very much can, compete with somebody else from the outside trying to come in. And not only can they compete, but they're very much needed because they have the on-the-ground expertise. And the other point I was going to make, just as the layman here, is it is an interesting aspect of needing to work as a group to deal with things like raising standards. Because as a group, if that's not handled, then a few bad interactions can then affect the whole region in a way that's not fair to folks who are dealing with things correctly.
Yeah, and I think that really, I mean, if we have 4 or 5 companies, working together, you're pretty, you can be pretty sure about certain standards because you kind of have that overview. But once you start growing and you start having more companies join in, then it's going to be absolutely crucial that you have your, that everyone straight up knows what those standards are and is working towards that. And it's going to be, and those are some of the things, those are some of the challenges, the communication between all the members and all the partners.
Yeah, I mean, we have to incentivize them to improve standards. They have to understand why. There's obviously good business reasons why, which need to be explained. These numbers like 65% of Europeans want a more eco-friendly holiday. That's not well known amongst the businesses here, so we give them that advice and that training as well. But yeah, how do we get them to raise their standards? And so for the Western Balkans Network, and you've got the charts up there, at the moment it's free to join our network, and we'll give you all of this support, which I was going to list in the next couple of slides, but you have to have a sustainable business plan. That's what you have to do. So just to get into our network, you have to start immediately raising the standards that matter to us, which is sustainable tourism.
And one thing that I think the point that can be made here, and I think this is what both you and Chitti and you both do very well, and the folks who work with y'all, is you don't necessarily see those standards as a hassle. You see it as a way of creating, and I know this is very specifically the case with both of you. You see it as a creative endeavor to make interesting products that take advantage of things that are already that have the potential of being sustainable in the future for the Balkans, which provides kind of a somewhat shoehorned segue that I've just created here into creative advantages for the region. Why is this something that has particular value for these networks, and how does this come about? Product development. What is it that is advantageous about being in a network to brainstorm these things? And I'll start with you Chitti, this time, and we'll talk shop in the virtual.
We'll just go to the next slide. Yeah, I mean, it's really going back to what I just said before. The advantages. The advantages are really in being able to create really good, solid products. So
maybe describe that process, because I know, for instance, with the Via Dinarica Alliance, you guys have a handful of products that involve multiple companies in multiple countries. And how, for instance, does that go down? So you've been working with some of these folks for a while, and you know that there's a couple of countries and a couple of operators that you work with that you, it'll be a stronger product if the two of you work together within your network, within the alliance. What's the process there?
Basically, what we start out with is we identify the market, and we look at potential sales avenues and different international businesses or different types of clients. And what we've seen in the region is that a lot of people are interested, and businesses are interested in one or two or three countries in the region. So that's where the Via Dinarica, the long distance trail comes in. So we are very quickly we're able to put together a product that spans maybe 2, 3 countries, or even in some cases 8 countries, with the cutting edge or the most off the beaten path, or depending what people are what the client is looking for. We are really very quickly able to match their expectations and put a product together that is competitive, that is out there, that's very creative, and it has all the the visuals. And once we have created that and we've sold it, we are then also able to work on promoting and marketing it together, rather than having one person. I can design a 23 day or week. We just can design a 23-day program spanning 8 countries. But how are you going to promote that? So then we work with our partners in the region, bring journalists in. We support those journalists. Actually, we are sharing costs there. We work with some of our international partners who are interested in this, and they want to also promote the destination. So we very quickly bring in high-class media, high-class journalists, and then we start, focusing trying to bring media attention over a period, I don't know, for 6 months, a year, to that, to the destination and also the product. So it's a lot of it's a lot of times when we work together, we're sharing costs, we're doing it quickly, and at the end, let's say we've sold the product, it's a year in advance. Next year, what we immediately have to do is we have to come up with systems so that we communicate with each other, so that we're looking at different corporate cultures, different organizational structures, etc. But we have to kind of make sure that we're all in sync, and that the reservations go in, that the special needs of people are being met, or our guests are being met, that we constantly are communicating with each other, that the guides are there, and that we actually implement the activity when it's time. So come the first guests or the first trips, that we have everything in place, from all the guides in the different countries to all the accommodation, to the single supplements, to the special needs for food, etc. And constantly we're communicating. There's this whole thing of, you come to a, let's say, for instance, you actually designed the tour, the guests are on the tour, and then you see you need to tweak it. So then you go back and forth behind the scenes with the partners. So you're constantly communicating, the clients actually have overestimated their ability to hike this trail, and now we need to have some more transfers, or whatever. So you're constantly communicating within the region and with all the different members how to do this. And then once you've done that, and the guests go home, and then you get this whole review process. So again, we're communicating with each other. So we're sending back and forth what the client was, or the guests were, how they experienced it. We're tweaking, or we're improving stuff where we need to improve it for the next time, so that we can incrementally, really improve the product. So there's a whole review process, and then before we know it, we've already, we're pricing it again for next year. So we're looking at, okay, how do we incorporate all of previous experiences into 2018 or 2019?
Well, it almost is like there's a multi-headed aspect of seeing the different parts of what works and what doesn't work, and then putting it back on the drawing board, and then having several people who are very experienced in what they do, being able to look at what can be used for next time. And I guess I would move it to you, Jack, here for a minute with regard to creating the products from the beginning, because I know that that's been a really strong thing that you guys have done in the Western Balkans. Has been a real focus for y'all.
Well, yeah, and listening to Thierry there, and as you know, Thierry, we're involved in Via Dinarica, and I've been in those meetings, and I've taken the phone calls from other members, you know, who are looking to put together a pan-regional tour, and they want the Montenegro component. And you're absolutely right. You know, we learn so much just by actually working together and starting to work. We begin to share what we all have different knowledge. So apart from different clients, we all understand different things in different ways. So working together, you know, we start to share what we know about things like risk assessment, about the structure of each day, about creating new activities. That process really works well just by working together. What we've done with the Western Balkans and with support from USAID and the Regional Economic Growth Project is we've tried to formalize that process in a way. So we're trying to start the development of some new themed tourism that didn't really exist in the region, which I talked about in the last webinar. So what we do is we've actually gone to the next step, and we've started creating things you can see on this chart here. We have fact sheets for all of our members, which we share widely. They've been translated into all of the regional languages. So for example, there'll be a 3 or 4 page there on how do you create a gastronomic tourism offer, what goes into that, and there's all kinds of advice in there about marketing as well and that kind of thing. We run training sessions through our membership. You know, a number of our members happen to be trainers in Leave No Trace or master educators in Leave No Trace. So we give each other Leave No Trace training so we can qualify for the Leave No Trace logo, you know, which is the most recognized outdoor ethics code in the world. Also on that chart, you see we've produced little aid memoirs for the guides. We've trained a number of guides. So we are going out, as I say, supported by USAID, and we're doing more specific training. But what happens is, when we create a new product, we invite the other members of our network to come and be the guinea pigs. I think this is absolutely crucial in what we do, because we're asking some of the businesses here to try and put on a new kind of offer, something they've never done before or considered before. Take, for example, the cooking. Guests come and actually want to cook rather than just eat at a traditional restaurant. The first time we do that, these businesses here are quite nervous, understandably. And of course, the best thing to do with any new tour is to test run it. So we go to our members. So we invite other businesses from across the region to come and be the first guinea pigs and try out a new offer and give really useful feedback at the end of every day. And obviously, we all learn from the process. They take home, they've learned something new. But also they can share their advice and their knowledge. So that's one really nice thing we do. But, you know, it all boils down to actually working together. Well, you learn far more than you would in a training session. So we need to get to work together.
Yeah, and I think what's also important, Jack, is just to point out that associations can have, you know, how would I say, different roles also. So, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, the Western Balkans Association is really also about getting just established businesses involved in, you know, in the process, get them up and running, create better standards for everyone, and of course also, you know, pushing some innovative products. Whereas, you know,
that's right. We're trying to create that grassroots that I talked about. You know, the experts said you're not like New Zealand, you don't have a grassroots. So yeah, we're trying to help some local families, people who haven't worked in tourism, who maybe want to provide homestay accommodation. So yeah, we're working at that level with people who have very little understanding whatsoever of tourism, but they have a love of their culture and the place they live in, and we can help them create a sustainable business on the back of that, which will benefit the whole of us. Yeah.
And then, so, you know, so there's definitely a place for associations and for people who are, for organizations who just started or are thinking to start, you know, into business. And then you have, on the other hand, you also have, like, you know, the businesses like within the Via Dinarica Alliance who, you know, like Black Mountain, like Outdoor Albania, you know, Green Visions. We've been established for, you know, 15, 20 years. We have gone through this whole process. We've learned, you know, many of these things, and and then we're happy to share this with with other businesses who are coming along. The thing is also that in case of, like, for instance, the Via Dinarica Alliance, we sometimes also share our skills with other international operators, who are for instance looking for better guides in the region, or and then we get involved in trainings ourselves. So there is also a level of we have all clients which are right up there. They're first class. Of course, we can learn more and we increase our skills better. And I think there can be within the associations there can be different levels of skill, and it really means also how do I would say what are the principles of operation. There's also that level of vision. How do we want to be together? Okay, standards is one thing, and the other thing is also responsible development of the region.
I love that, and it's also a really great segue, because I mean all these excuse me, all of these questions and all of these concepts are obviously very related, and they happen in flow time. When networks are working together, associations are working together. They're not dividing all these things. Now, I like some of that aspect from the position of you and Jack's company have both been around for quite a while, and you'll have a certain way of doing things. A brand new company doesn't have the experience that y'all's companies have, but they might also, because they don't have that experience and they don't have a cemented version of what they can and can't do, it also promotes some innovation, which I think is pretty cool. It's always good to come at a situation, with a completely beginner's mindset, and I love that aspect, and I love the aspect of the mentoring that happens with the creativity. But it leads into the competitive advantages question that we have in front of us with this slide. Purely in a journalistic way, I'll ask, if I'm a small company and I know that the Via Dinarica Alliance exists, I know that the Western Balkans Geotourism Network exists, why do I want to join? What competitive advantage does it give me to be a part of one of these networks? And I'll let Jack, why don't you start? I see that Chitti is muted.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, once they get together and start realizing that the community has some leverage, they want to be involved in lobbying government. But what we need to do to get them into our network is we need to give them incentives. Why would they join our network? Because ours is essentially about making them improve their product offer. There's benefits in doing that on its own, but when they look at any association, they'll be thinking, particularly if there's a membership fee, what's in it for me? What are the member benefits for me? Even in our case, we only ask for an investment in time. They're still thinking, well, why should I make that investment? So one of the key things is marketing. And as Thierry said, our organizations are somewhat different. You guys are very good, the Via Dinarica are very, very good at your marketing. And so there's a very strong pull to get people to join Via Dinarica because they can benefit from the marketing on the back of it. With us, we major a bit more on the product design, a bit more on the training and support. But of course, we've got Via Dinarica as well to showcase our products. So, we're trying to create product that fit along the Via Dinarica trail, become the pearls of the necklace, if you will. But we do have some marketing that we do ourselves. I mean, we produce these fact sheets, product sheets for all of our members, which we print ourselves. We don't ask any fee for that, and we take them to big shows like World Travel Market, ITB. Again, through the Regional Economic Growth Project, USA, we've been able to take some of our members to the shows themselves, which is very valuable. And we have a joint stand with you, Thierry, as you know, Via Dinarica stand. Yeah. But just one example here is, we were chosen last year by the World Nomads insurance company. Every year they have a global travel writers competition, and every year they choose a partner, and that partner benefits from something in excess of 2 million online visits to the competition pages. This is a big piece of marketing. And every year they choose a partner, and of course, in reality there's no way they would have chosen any of our members individually. Yet last year they chose the Western Balkans Geotourism Network. So we were able to pass on that opportunity to our members to say, do you want to get exposure in this competition? We've signed the deal, so this is what you need to do to be a part of it. So there's just one example of something that they just simply couldn't do on their own that has real value to them. But the competitive advantage that I think most excites potential members is this idea that we can help them with the marketing, because marketing is expensive, and they don't even know where to begin in many cases. As Thierry said, we have a lot of experience perhaps with some international tour operators which we can share to our members, but also, yeah, we have a lot more experience in marketing perhaps than some of our members, so there's another benefit there.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Thierry?
Yeah, I do. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that for them, the competitive advantage they see most readily is we're going to get marketing support. The competitive advantage that I think they benefit most from is the fact that they can actually develop much better products, because let's face it, before you get your marketing right, you need to get your product right. So I think that's the real advantage for them. But the thing that and you'll find this, anybody out there who's trying to create networks, they'll find that perhaps the biggest benefit for members is, can I get more exposure for my product? Can I sell more product? And we can offer that through our network.
Well, and just using it as an example, I mean, at the very least, again, looking at it as a non-operator position here, I mean, when you have more folks talking, you have more folks talking. So if you have 10 people talking about products in a region, that's at least 10 times more than would be talking if it were just my company, my fictional company alone. I've seen y'all in action, excuse me, both the Western Balkans and Via Dinarica at tourism fairs, specifically ITB, since we brought that up a couple times. And one thing that I've always admired about the way y'all handle that is folks, travelers, or other businesses who are hoping to have a relationship with people in the region will walk up to the stand, and the person who is the first one to make contact with that person at the Western Balkans Via Dinarica stand speaks on behalf of the region first, as opposed to their company first. And it could be that, in fact, the thing that the person who has walked up would best suit the visitor to the stand might be that person's company. But that's not the way that the conversation is led. The conversation is led by laying out all the cards on the table. So obviously each stands for a larger marketing share, if for no other reason they're involved in more conversations, if you've got more people at the table.
Yes, it's more conversations, and also what we have is this. It's in terms of going just to fairs and to events. There's a lot happening on the stand when you have 8, 10, 15 companies there. There's always something happening on the stand. Whereas if you're alone, or you're with a handful of people, chances are that if you go off to some meetings, etc., and do some things, that there's one person in the stand and it kind of looks kind of empty. There's something happening, but with a lot of buzz around, even though people are there, that attracts attention on its own in the fairs, because there must be something. People are thinking there must be something happening there.
Well, especially since half the people you leave behind are now drinking rocket. It immediately becomes like a little party stand for no particular reason, except for why not? We're all.
I think we were voted the friendliest stand, weren't we, at Berlin ITB? I don't know if it was this year or the year before. And that tells its own story if you think about it, because one of the misconceptions that people have about this region is, that perhaps we don't get on so well together across the Western Balkans. My organization covers 6 countries that don't have the most settled history and past together, and everybody knows there's been trouble in the region. So there's this sort of misconception, perhaps there's still this really bad feeling between the region. Perhaps there still is that at government level, but just by being together and supporting each other and helping each other, I think we send a very clear message. There'll be people from Kosovo and people from Serbia and from Bosnia and Albania and Montenegro and Macedonia, all standing there together, saying the same thing, that this is an incredible region that deserves not to be spoilt by mass tourism. So that's true for Via Dinarica and for my network, although we're very specific about sustainable tourism. Via Dinarica have that very strongly as well. And to me, it was a bit of a surprise hearing the private sector actually come up with that they want to protect this destination. They want to do so many of the things that government should be doing for us. And yet between us, there's a bit of an attitude I sometimes hear from government associations working in tourism, that somehow the private sector must all be a bunch of mercenaries, that all we care about is money and we don't care about the longevity, the future, things like seasonality, you know, those things we all care about. And it's only by when you're actually working with a network like we do that you realize that you're not the only person who takes these things seriously, that actually there's some incredibly professional businesses in this region that share that vision. So that's something I always get from those meetings, Thierry, when we're together, is to go home and think, well, thank God it's not just Black Mountain or one or two of us trying to protect this destination and stop them building all over it, as they've done everywhere else in the Med. But actually, there's a lot of us out there doing that. So that's a very powerful thing for me. That's a motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Chitti, maybe take some of that up, because I know that regionality is incredibly important to you, and is one of the kind of chief things that Green Visions has worked with almost from a base foundation level over the last handful of years, especially as involved in working with different partners like Jack and other people. But let me just say this real quick as we're going to this slide for regional benefits, where the segue is great. From a kind of an anecdotal level, as a travel writer, what I notice is that almost to the location, almost to the locale, when I cover something, be it a city or a country or a region or whatever, not coincidentally, the reason that I end up covering it is because that place has learned to cooperate in a way that now puts it on the map, really. And you can see it a lot when you're covering a city, for instance, because you'll notice that a lot of the operators in that city are starting to promote each other instead of compete with each other. And it gives the place a much easier, more fun place to visit. And, you know, I feel that's where the Balkans are going. I certainly feel like that's where the two of you work. And that's the place within which the two of you work. And yeah, Chitti, maybe speaking about what that shared vision means on a conceptual level after you've done some of these product development and you understand the marketing and maybe how this works on a pride level even, or however you want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the you know, once I mean, I think the main thing here is for us to keep while we're developing product, while we're implementing products, running trips, we keep our you know, communications open. We talk about, you know, different communities in which we work. There's all kinds of constraints that come up, anything from, you know, destruction of the environment, wildfires, or you know, communities destroyed or not cleaning up after tourism, etc. I think what's important is that we start that, you know, that we have the discussion with ourselves and the members, and also discussion with some of the other partners who might not be part of the network. So the national parks, some of the tourism boards, some of the towns, the villages, the you know, the local community, or even the guys from the small Islamic community in their village mosque. It could be anything, you know. It's like just start the discussion with people, bring up the issues, and while you're bringing them up, you know, things start rolling. And I think that's something that's so interesting, because normally you could just do a product or just do run a trip, and then you go through it, you pay your services, and off you go, and that's about it. But because we're so locally based, we can actually have, you know, bring groups together, have a discussion about, you know, some of the trips or some of the activities that you're organizing in that specific area, and see how you can improve them or how you can work with them on protecting the environment. So I think that's, for me, is an interesting thing. So, you know, while we are reaching out internationally and we have products that go regionally, we very much act on a local community level, because we are local, as each of these organizations. And because we come from those communities, we have an impact on our local communities. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think perhaps I spoke to this slide already as well anyway in my enthusiasm on the previous slide, but I think it's the empowerment of people here, not just here. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I've also been involved in help setting up networks in Jordan and Moldova and other places. And the first meetings you have with the businesses, they come up with a list of their concerns, of their problems and their worries, and they think they're all unique to them. And it's typically, government doesn't understand them, lack of investment, all kinds of issues, trash, all kinds of things they come up with, and they're laboring with these problems on their own in isolation. And when we get together with them and we say, you're not on your own, there's a network of us here, we feel the same way as you do, and then we start to share stories. And as I said to you, I looked at the New Zealand story, and I like to tell our members about 3 characters who made a huge difference in New Zealand. One was a guy called Trevor Gamble, who invented the jet boat. And he could have patented this amazing invention, but he let everybody develop their own. And he started offering jet boat tours in Queenstown, in New Zealand. And other companies started setting up around him, offering the same package. And his attitude was, they're going to cause problems. They're going to kill somebody. So I'm going to actually take all my competitors out and train them how to do this properly. And the other heroes of mine are Henry Van Ash and Henry Van Ash, effectively, who created the bungee, because that started in New Zealand and the government weren't legislating for bungee jumping in New Zealand. Their attitude was, it's a new thing, we'll let it go, we'll wait until somebody's killed and then we'll bring in the legislation. And so, he said, no, we need to actually create our own standards then. If government won't step up, we need to do it for ourselves. And me coming from somewhere like the United Kingdom, I'm quite used to the idea that businesses are very outspoken and they step up and they push government all the time. We're lucky in the UK. We have a thing called a skills council, where businesses actually sit down with academia and tell them what they should be teaching to students, say, in a hotel school. In this part of the world, which had essentially planned economy for 70 years, I find there's a bit more reluctance to step up, to say, people are prepared to say, well, that's the government's domain. That's the government takes care of those things. Okay, they're not doing a good job and we're not happy with the way things are going, but I'm a business. I have no right to push government to make things change. So, and what we're discovering through our network, and you're discovering through Via Dinarica, is that we can actually create our own future to some extent, and that we do have power, and we're not out here alone with the same problems. Lots of people share our problems. And it's just so cathartic, isn't it, Thierry, when we get together and we talk and everybody's nodding and saying, yeah, no, we thought we're the only ones who had that problem. You're not. And, so we can share solutions and we can talk about ways we could put pressure on government to change things that need changing.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And I think there's even another, there's a layer there as well, where you, for instance, do something with government, and then even you're pushing government, you're advocating something with government, or you're sharing an idea with government. They might not react immediately to it, but eventually they will also see that the Slovenians are doing something, because they're at that level also talking with each other. Slovenian Tourism Board, for instance, talks to the Croatian Tourism Board, and then maybe there's somebody from the Bosnian Tourism Board kind of hanging around there as well. And then they see like, oh, these guys have, put the Via Dinarica on their official tourism website, and all of a sudden, the guys go, oh, we should do something like that as well. So we recently got a also a request to would we be interested in giving our Instagram handle, which sounded a little bit like something that the Bosnian Tourism Board wanted to do. But that we've been using for now almost 6 years. They said, well, would you mind handing the Instagram handle over to us for, and it's all about outdoor adventure in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we think it's really, really cool and want to promote this more. So, they're obviously looking at, at what the others are doing as well. And not only that, now they go like, oh, this is a very good, somebody's there thinking, they're looking at, there's a lot happening in the region. And I'm sure it's because, Some of our partners in Croatia pushed the tourism board in Croatia. They opened up. Maybe there are some partners in Kosovo who also talk to the tourism board, and they put their logo on a video. And before you know it, you don't know actually where the change is coming from, but it's rolling and it's moving. And I sometimes I get surprised. I go like, oh, you want to get involved? Out of nowhere, when you didn't even have them on the radar screen, but now they are starting to push and they want to be involved. And I think that's one of the results of a regional network. So somebody in Macedonia can be pushing Leave No Trace, and it will be picked up in Bosnia. How that happened is very difficult to say, but I can see how people are linking, and we've made that happen, which is great. And you need to have a vision for that, and you need to keep on going, being open to different ways of doing, for instance, advocacy or different products or different trainings. But in the long run, we've seen so many changes happen as a result of our network, and with very little, let's say, financial involvement. We're not talking about $1 million projects. Talking about very specific investments that businesses can make.
I've seen that change, Thierry. When we started 12 years ago, adventure travel company in Montenegro, everybody said, but Montenegro is a beach destination, there's no adventure travel there. And in our early days, we used to put big screens up and show people, the second deepest canyon in the world, the Tara Canyon, and the mountains and Dermator National Park. And they'd say to us, where is that? We'd say, it's here, it's in Montenegro. You came for the beach, but there's so much more. I don't hear that anymore, and everybody's now talking about the adventure destination for Europe as being the Balkans, and that's the net result of all of these conversations. All of these people in our industry, they all have their part to play, and they're all doing a little piece to move the marketing story forward. And most of this happened, gradually and slowly over the first 8 or 9 years. But luckily, in the last 6 or 7 years, we now have some associations where we can try and manage that process and push it even further. And so the big leap forward has been really in the last 3 or 4 years, isn't it? With getting listed all over the place as one of the best new hiking trail in the world, that kind of thing. Yes. Through associations, you can't do it as a private business on your own unless you have huge pockets, which we don't.
Yeah, but if you look at the slide that's up now, that's up there, what are the challenges of keeping a group together? In many ways, okay, these are challenges, but what we're just talking about, they're challenges, but they're also opportunities. So you don't have a lot of money, but okay, so we can still make it happen. We can still pop up in in the best publications in the world. We can still have journalists focus on the highlights in the region without having to invest huge sums of money. There are ways of doing that, and of course, you have to be kind of creative with that. But in many ways, lack of funding, I think, can also be it's not a plus, but it's it makes us creative. We might have limited products right now, but then we're developing all kinds of new products. As you were talking about, from products that never existed, but it's almost like a clean slate. So you can come up with things that never happened here, and maybe never happened in Europe, and now they're we've developed stuff here because creativity is endless. So yeah.
Let's go back to that slide that we had just up for just a moment, and let me just start to bring. We had a couple of questions in. This is an incredible conversation mainly because I know both of you so well, and it's also really good for me to get a front row seat of this. But I'll say this as a way to kind of platform this a little bit for both of you. It's kind of like, and I know that this is both of y'all's philosophies because we've talked about this a lot, myself with each of you individually, is that if you don't have conversations with other folks, you know what you have. You have whatever's inside your head. If you have conversations with other folks, there's no real telling where it'll end up. But the exponentiality of those conversations end up doing some of the things that have happened in the region, because everybody has a different set of connections to whoever, be they journalists or other operators in the region or other operators around the world. And those things start to mesh because trust is created. The networks develop a bit of trust with each other because you start to have meetings, and as it just becomes a positive situation based on open communication. It can't happen unless you concertedly have that goal, which both of your organizations, which are also very deeply entwined, have. I'm not going to go to a great length here to point out some of the challenges. We've pointed them out a little bit during the course of this discussion with regard to how folks work with each other and so forth. If either of you would like to point out one or two before I ask the couple of questions that we've gotten in, I'd love to hear what y'all have to say.
Can I?
Because this is important.
Yeah. Can I pick up on Thierry's comment then? I'm sorry to jump in there, Thierry, but you made the comment just now about the work and effort I think that you have to put into these, running these networks, and I think you said, Alex, as well, that quite a lot of the effort in both of our associations falls on our shoulders, yours, Thierry, and mine. It's a labour of love running these networks. I mean, I listed some of the problems we've faced there, and they are opportunities as well. But think about funding, for example. I mean, how do we fund this association? We want to do these good works. We want to generate newsletters and printed materials and training leaflets, and we want to be at trade shows, and we need money for that. So, you have choices. Do you become a membership fee-paying network, or do you charge a levy on the products that you sell? There's lots of different ways of doing it. But what you need is somebody who's going to say, look, now we have an income. We need to develop an income for our association. Somebody has to really be dedicated to managing that process. So if it's a membership fee you're charging, who's in charge of membership retention and recruitment and correspondence with the members? There's a lot of work involved. I mean, it's absolutely worth doing, but the biggest problem for me is the effort that you have to put into these networks. You can do it every time and every now and then you celebrate some joint success that you've achieved together. It keeps you motivated, but it's hard, particularly during the tourist season, to put that level of effort.
And we have small companies, so we don't have there's not you can't put a whole can't put 5 people towards it.
No, and we don't have a full-time employee, even who's constantly monitoring our web social media and stuff like that. Yeah. But as you said also, Thierry, the network will solve some of these problems for you. I mean, lack of funding. One more example is we were able to put on. Okay, this is slightly predates the Western Balkans Network, but we were able to put on a 250-kilometer, 48-hour endurance race for £15,000. Or 15,000 euros, I should say, because 6 companies came together and donated equipment and time and effort and everything else. So this, again, I just underscoring the power of association. It does solve many of the problems that are listed here. But these are things you will encounter. It's very time consuming. You do need some source of funding. You do need ongoing dedicated management. And both Thierry and I give as much time as we can, but it's not always a lot, as you said, Thierry, particularly the season. But I think the first thing is you have to have a shared vision. You have to understand what it is that makes you want to be in the association. What is it brings you together? What's the glue that holds you together? And in the very first meeting I attended for the Western Balkans Network, it was an eye-opener to hear everybody saying, we need to do sustainable tourism and we need to do it well. So we have our shared vision, and I know you do, Thierry. But yeah, those are some of the problems.
Well, this is a good segue into one of the questions, and I'm just going to leapfrog off of that, Jack. What I've noticed about both of your companies and about both of these associations that folks might not necessarily get. I mean, you've got to really be in love with the idea of both running your business and being dedicated to the region and being dedicated to each of the other companies because of the higher desire to push the region in this case. And I've always thought about both of y'all's companies and the companies that are involved in both of these associations, networks, whatever, alliance. It is kind of like having 2 jobs because you have to be extraordinary. You're not just an ordinary company working really hard to gather clients and put people on trails and in hotels and whatever. You also have the extraordinary amount of work of having to work to inspire the other network members, and in working to diplomatically delegate tap and within the network, because these things don't just because a lot of folks are calling themselves part of something, it doesn't mean that that something then moves forward. And in that sense, Tadic from Bosnia and Herzegovina asks, and either one of you can jump in here. This might be something that's appropriate for either. How are activities funded? What are the financial obligations of the members? So this is somewhere between a challenge for network membership, and also, I guess, this is the reality of things.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are different sides to the funding. We as companies have budgets to to fund marketing efforts, and obviously we're limited as in, you know, smaller companies. But what you can see is if you have all of a sudden have 16 companies who are each putting in their little, you know, or a certain part of their marketing budget towards going to fairs, all of a sudden you're standing at a fair that you would otherwise never be at. You have access to these markets simply because the fair would just be too expensive. You know, having a stand there, paying for all the presentations you're organizing there, not to speak of your travel and your accommodation and food there. So by working together in these networks, you're actually putting, you know, your small bit into a larger pot, and you know, so you can do more with your money. Obviously, there needs to be trust. There needs to be a plan. But that has really worked for, I think, for the Via Dinarica Alliance, and you know, also for the Western Balkans, I think. And plus on top of that, that we as the Alliance and the Western Balkans get together and work together on, you know, on fairs. So you even have networks joining with networks to work, you know, to put some of their budgets together. So that's one side. And then the other side is maybe you want to talk about that, Jack. You know, there's the whole project side, the whole donor side.
Yeah, our activities we've had quite a bit of support from USAID, Regional Economic Growth Program, over the years. We're not sure. I mean, we can't rely on that. We need our own source of income, and this is the challenge we're now facing as a network. You know, this is why I was talking about: do we become a fee-paying membership organisation, or do we levy a charge on the products that we jointly sell? And both have pros and cons as approaches to doing this. But most of our activities have been funded either by USAID or by our members actually being generous themselves and putting their hand in their own pockets. So, you know, we've paid, I think when we need things translated, we go to our member network. When we need things printed, they will pay for those kind of things. We don't have a lot of money, but we'll be able to get things achieved thus far. But yes, we're now on this cusp of what do we do? How do we fund our activities in the future? And we can achieve quite a lot. We have achieved quite a lot with very low funding, but obviously we want to achieve even more. And so that's the next challenge that we have. What was the second part of the question? I wrote down how our activities funded, and the second part, was that about the management of the organisation? Or
yeah, I think maybe the other half of that could be related to that, but also just generally how members work together to I mean, because there's a lot of little tasks that have to happen. I mean, everybody has to pitch in at some level.
Yeah, we have we created a board, and so we have in there the key roles, the chairperson, which isn't such an important role, but that I hold that position, and they promised me that when they gave me the role that they would have an election every year. So that's 4 years in now. We're still waiting for the next election, but I enjoy being chairman. We also have a financial person who looks after the financial accounts, which is going to be more important in the future, and a marketing person. And we have a manager for each of the destinations. So the Western Balkans Geotourism Network includes 6 different destinations, which I listed. So we have a manager for each of those. So we try and spread the workload as thinly as we can. But, you know, the reality is, as Thierry said, with small businesses, not so much gets done in the summer season. We have a kind of hiatus when we're also busy looking after our guests. But yeah, we try to meet as regularly as we can. And certainly during the winter months, we meet every 2 weeks on Skype and have a chat about where things are going. But if we had more funding, then it would be lovely in the future to actually have a full-time person, because that would open whole new vistas for us. You know, we could do different things and, you know, make more money from our website, that kind of thing. But yeah, we do benefit. We also are supported by Balkan Vibe. I should give them a big up because they're hosting the seminar. But we also can sell our members' products through Balkan Vibe, which is a fantastic online resource for information about what to do in the Balkans. So yeah, that's how we confront that one. But it's an issue we're still grappling with, to be honest, particularly the funding.
I've got on the screen the information about contacts for both of y'all, and I mean, clearly part of this webinar is to explain what Via Dinarica Alliance and what Western Balkans Geotourism Network do. Not necessarily meant to be a plug so much as to explain two really good examples of what these networks are. And if I'm not mistaken, both of y'all will field questions. Folks don't have to feel like they're going to throw their hat in the ring and immediately join either of you by sending in information to ask questions about what all this means. I'll ask this last question from a fella in Serbia, Nenad, who is curious to both of you, and then we'll have this fade out for us here. How would you describe the benefits of networks like yours as opposed to, let's say, being a member of a hotel association or operator association? I think the idea here is whether or not, if you have a hotel, are you bound to that hotel association and not potentially able to join, let's say, for instance, Western Balkans Geotourism Network or Via Dinarica Alliance? You know, what's the benefits of these as opposed to a traditional network?
Yeah, to be honest, I've never been part of a traditional network. Can't hear you.
Nor have I. I've looked at several though, Thierry. I've looked at. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, I mean, and you know, I've kind of. People have contacted us and asked us to be part of of associations and maybe even some international associations. But what I realized about the difference here, I think, with our organizations is that we are so truly regional. So we share a lot of commonalities, some common interests, even culture. You know, we share some ways of how we communicate with each other in the region, which makes the connection, sometimes very, very powerful. And I think with, we are not perhaps what we're doing, and again, I haven't been part of hotel associations and stuff like that. But what the feeling that I have within, for instance, the Alliance is that we truly want to, we come together to see how can we solve some of the issues for us as as businesses in the region. Whether it be environmental, whether it be business related, or whether it be marketing, and we're constantly trying to resolve this, come up with solutions, be creative, look at different projects and how we can move this forward. So it's very hands-on, it's very grassroots. There is no big structure, top-down structure that tells us, okay, here's your €600 fee, and this is this is what you have and what you get to do. No, actually, it's more like, okay, what are the issues for this year? How are we going to deal with that? Where are we going to go? Which fairs? What are some of the ideas? We have regular discussions. We go on trips with each other, and through it, and that's the association or the alliance. We really come up with a structure that works for us, and with it, there's other people joining. I mean, I think maybe that's the thing. It's not a rigid structure. It is it's very much a fluid one, and it's very we're growing, of course, but it's very supportive in many ways.
Jack, would you like to chime in there a little bit?
Yeah.
The last word before we start to taper off here.
Yeah, agree with you again, Thierry. I mean, the whole structure of our organisation is, as you said, it's much more grassroots. It's much more informal. I have looked. I'm a member of a couple of international organisations, but typically, you know, they come with a large membership fee. They're very slick. Their marketing's fantastic, and when you join, you have a long list of very tangible benefits. So they would have negotiated for their association things like a joint insurance deal, so they'd have an insurer providing liabilities insurance for their companies, or they might be doing joint marketing together. So they have some very clear benefits from joining. We do, but ours are less tangible, and that's why at the moment we don't have this membership fee to join. But I think that, to me, that's the big difference, is really about the size and about what we want to achieve. For the big mass tourism businesses, it's all about mass market, isn't it? It's about reaching as many people as you can. So these big organizations like APTA and people like that, you know, I think it's all about getting the marketing, getting the word out, and marketing and promotion, whereas ours is a lot more about training and that kind of thing. So that's the big difference from my point of view.
Well, the inclusivity of both of your organizations, networks, I should say, has made a big difference. I know for folks coming to the region, potentially without them even knowing that it makes a big difference in the quality of products, and also the communication that happens between operators. So I'll just say, you know, on behalf of myself as a traveler, I'm grateful, and I don't mean that with any false sense of gratitude. It's made a difference in my happiness here. So. Unless there's any last words, I'll just say thanks again to Balkan Vibe for putting this on and always doing such a great job, and to both Jack, you and Western Balkans Geotourism Network, and Chitti, you and the Via Dinarica Alliance for sponsoring this and making this what it is, and USAID and the Regional Economic Growth Project for making this a reality. Thanks to you both. We're very lucky to be able to have this kind of resource in a region that is also growing the way that the Balkans are. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and as you said before, if anyone has any questions, is interested in knowing a little bit more about what we do, just get in touch with us. All of our details are here on the slide deck, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you either in virtual reality or somewhere on a fair or on the ground, or when we travel through the region.
Yeah, and I'm going to finish on a shameless plug. I'm just going to say, if you're interested in sustainable tourism and protecting this amazing destination, the Western Balkans, you don't have to necessarily work in tourism, but if you're based here and you're working, you have some interest in tourism, and you want to help, get in touch. It's free to join, and get in touch with me through those links that I posted there, and I'll send you lots of information. And if you're trying to set up an organization of your own somewhere else, I'm quite happy to share our fact sheets with you. All the training materials we developed, we'll send them out, as long as you're sustainable businesses. That's all we care about. We'll help you anyway.
That's not a shameless plug. That's proper mindset that I think everybody in the world who is interested in tourism existing in a way that promotes regions and places in a correct way into the foreseeable future have to think. So thanks for that, Jack. And thanks for anybody who happened to be and remember, you can check this thing out anytime you want, and get in touch with anybody involved. We're all very, very happy to be of assistance to anybody who wants to think about tourism in a sustainable way. Thanks to both of you. Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.